Everyone in the precinct whispered behind her back, but none of them knew she had pulled a single file from the evidence locker that could ruin careers. It wasn't revenge she wanted, just the truth, raw and recorded. I didn't flinch when he said it. Your case is all over town. They call you the Mafia's favorite officer. The lieutenant leaned back in his chair like a man who'd just flipped his last card, smirk carved into his face like he practiced it in the mirror. My hand stayed still on the metal edge of the desk. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. Then I guess town doesn't know me very well, I said. The air in internal affairs always smelled like cold coffee, old ink, and fresher betrayals. This wasn't my first time in this room, but it was the first time the floor felt like it was shifting beneath my boots, like the room itself wasn't sure who was under investigation. The case had started with a warehouse fire. It always starts small, doesn't it? Just a fire, just a name scribbled in a half-burned ledger, just a muffled voice on a city surveillance mic. But every time I opened a new case file, it felt less like procedure and more like peeling back skin. Underneath it all, something rotten was breathing. They said I was getting too close, that I was crossing lines, that the way the Mafia stopped showing up in my reports meant I was protecting someone. One morning, I came in and someone had stuck a sticky note on my locker. Thanks for keeping our friends warm. Signed, nobody. I knew where it came from, not the streets. They know better than to mess with my name. No, this came from the inside. And the worst part? They weren't even subtle anymore. The whispers didn't stop after the lieutenant's smirk. They thickened. Every time I passed the hallway outside HR, every time a Zoom call accidentally unmuted, I heard my name dragged like a chalk outline across concrete. I heard the words deal, cover-up, Mafia rumors. I held my ground, didn't flinch, didn't fold, because I had requested one thing, just one, the file. Audio DO33 MP3. It was buried inside the evidence locker, tagged under an unrelated burglary gone cold, a recorder retrieved from an old arrest the lieutenant himself had signed off on. Something he thought had been forgotten, something that had never been logged properly. I'd spotted the number once, months ago, in a case file he left open when he stepped away to take a call. A list of recordings marked incomplete, just hanging there like low fruit. And I waited. Watched, connected dots in silence while they wrote me off as too friendly with the wrong people. When I made the formal request, I phrased it like routine. Chain of custody review, cross-checking timestamps for unrelated incident. They didn't suspect a thing, not yet. But the moment that file landed in my hands, everything changed. Inside Audio DO33 MP3 wasn't just static. It was voices, names, a plan, and one voice in particular, deep and laughing. Add some rumors, make her look dirty, real dirty. No one'll check twice. They wouldn't have, if I hadn't been patient, if I hadn't trusted the silence. They built a perfect lie. But one crack, one audio file, can bring down the whole precinct. I didn't expect the district attorney to call me personally. His voice came through my office phone like a wire pulled tight. Sergeant Vega? Yes? We heard it, all of it. Audio DO33 MP3. That file becomes your shield, not the charge. I held the receiver against my shoulder and stared at the blinds casting crooked lines over my caseboard. The room felt different now, as if it finally belonged to me again. For weeks, I'd been living like a stranger inside my own department. A ghost with a badge. My locker had been emptied once, no official note, no explanation. Just everything inside scattered across the floor, including the worn leather notebook my father gave me when I graduated from the academy. It was open, pages smeared with footprints, like someone wanted to leave their mark, like someone wanted me to know they were close enough to touch. I'd gone straight to the evidence locker that morning, clipboard in hand, Form 237B signed off in triplicate, all the proper boxes ticked. The file was exactly where I suspected, misfiled under a counterfeit case, tagged with the lieutenant's initials. No wonder it had stayed hidden. Most officers wouldn't look twice at something buried in a dusty drawer from 5 years ago. But I wasn't most officers, and I knew his scent on paper like blood on snow. When I handed the recorder to the forensic technician, I didn't blink. "Chain of custody has been continuous," I said. "Check for audio integrity. I want a waveform report within 2 hours." He hesitated. "This file, is this for the Rossi case?" "No," I said. "It's for mine." That's when the gears started moving. And that's when I realized they never thought I'd fight back using their own system. They underestimated how many hours I spent combing through case file after case file, documenting every slip-up, every accidental omission, every recorder that went mysteriously missing. They underestimated how quietly I could work when no one was listening. But the DA listened. More importantly, he acted. Within 24 hours of the file being authenticated, things started shaking. The lieutenant's calendar was frozen. He missed his first roll call in 20 years. HR locked down his email, and word spread. Not on the news, not in press releases, but through the hallways and into the silences of coffee machines and break room glances. They weren't calling me the Mafia's favorite anymore. They were just calling me something else, dangerous. Because audio 033.mp3 didn't just capture a rogue statement. It painted an entire map of manipulation. The laugh, the words, add some rumors. You know, the ones she can't shake. He knew exactly what falsehoods would stick to a woman like me. Latina, streetwise, too clean, too efficient, too quiet. I was everything they couldn't control. So they branded me something easier to kill than credibility. But now they were realizing something terrifying. That file wasn't my revenge. It was my insurance policy. She walked into the trap they built and made it collapse from the inside. But that was just step one. Things are unraveling fast. Want to see how deep the cover-up goes? Follow, comment your theory, and watch it all fall apart. Legally. The silence in the precinct shifted. Not louder, but denser. Like the walls were holding their breath. People who used to pat me on the shoulder avoided eye contact now. A few sergeants even changed their desks, not because they feared me, but because they realized I was the only one still playing by the rules. And that made me dangerous. The district attorney's office had requested my presence downtown, not for questioning, for consultation. They wanted to know who else might be entangled, not just in the audio 033 MP3 mess, but in the pattern behind it, because the pattern was spreading, and it had fingerprints. As I walked toward the DA's building, I passed a newsstand. The front page didn't have my name, not yet, but the headline danced too close. Internal Affairs Investigation halts major gang indictment. Source, evidence tampered. That was the case file I'd helped build for 6 months. They shelved it in a heartbeat the moment the file played. I should have been devastated. I felt relieved. Because now the DA saw what I saw. They didn't just want to frame me. They needed to protect someone else, someone whose deals depended on my silence. In the interview room, the DA didn't offer pleasantries. He slid a folder toward me. These were the other names mentioned in peripheral calls. You recognize anyone? I scanned the printouts. Some I knew, some made me wince. One made my pulse spike. Detective Sandler, vice unit, decorated, transferred 2 years ago from Chicago. Quiet, efficient, never liked me. always smiled like a politician. "He's not the center," I said slowly. "But he's in the room when it happens." The DA nodded. "Then we pull thread by thread, just like you did." He paused. "You're not scared, are you?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I was," I said. Then I realized fear only works on people who believe the rules protect them. I know better now. Back at the precinct, the evidence locker was sealed. Temporarily. A forensic audit, official language for, "We suspect your house is on fire and we're checking which room it started in." An officer from another unit whispered near the coffee machine, unaware I was behind her. "They say she's got recordings, all of them. Even ours. Even ours." "Damn." Pause. "Good." I slipped past unnoticed, but I carried those words with me. Not dangerous, not traitor. Good. I opened my inbox later that evening and saw something strange. A single email with no subject, no text, just one attachment, redacted A033.wave. I knew the file, but this wasn't from the DA. It wasn't from forensics. The metadata pointed to a private device, external, burned CD origin. Someone had copied the file, someone still inside, and they were sending a message. Redacted A033.wave, same voice, same laugh. But something was different. I put on my headphones and hit play. The audio started mid-sentence, warped slightly at the edges like it had been run through old tape. "Nah, don't worry, she won't fight back. Not her style." A pause, then, "If she does, we just reopen that old thing. You know which one? They'll eat it up. She's not clean, she's just quiet." I sat frozen. That wasn't in the original audio 033 MP3. This was a second clip, a continuation. They'd planned contingencies, not just one rumor, but several, files, statements, a narrative they could control. The man speaking was still unnamed, but I recognized the rhythm of his words, like chalk on a blackboard. Lieutenant Brax. He wasn't just building false stories, he was stockpiling ammunition, and now someone inside the house he'd built was handing me the blueprints. Why? That's what haunted me. If someone inside was leaking, they either had a conscience, or they were playing a deeper game. Later that night, I stood alone in the precinct parking garage. The air was metallic, humming with the distant pulse of backup generators. I stared at the oil stains under my unmarked sedan, thinking of all the hours I'd spent tailing suspects who felt less slippery than the people I shared payroll with. The DA's voice echoed from earlier. "You're not scared, are you?" Maybe I was, but fear doesn't stop you when the truth starts breathing down your neck. Next morning, I entered the bullpen, and every screen had the same frozen image. An email chain accidentally leaked to the press. Subject: Handling Vega, Draft Strategy. Sender: Someone in HR. CC'd: Legal, Media Liaison, Lieutenant Brax. They were preparing a formal dismissal on grounds of internal instability and cooperation concerns. Their words, not mine. My desk phone rang. Internal line. "Don't come upstairs," said a low voice. Click. I closed my eyes, took one breath, then opened my drawer and retrieved the flash drive I'd been hiding beneath the laminated precinct seating chart. It contained everything. Not just audio 033 MP3, but versions, comparisons, inconsistencies. The smoking gun wasn't the recording. It was the edits they made to hide it. And now they were preparing to bury me for finding it. I headed not to HR, not to Brax, but to Zoom. I called a quiet contact in the city's oversight division, the kind that doesn't wear badges or make public appearances. "Officer Vega," he answered. "You were right," I said. "They're coming after me next." "And what do you want from me?" 5 minutes with the right people. You have 3 tonight. Bring your drive." Click. It was no longer about clearing my name. It was about stopping theirs from swallowing the truth forever. The conference room smelled like polished wood and last-minute panic. City oversight wasn't housed in some majestic courthouse. It was a concrete box nestled behind a parking garage, intentionally invisible. A place where things disappeared or quietly began. The perfect limbo for careers on the edge. I stood across from 3 men and 1 woman, none in uniform. One had a pen that never stopped clicking. Another had an inbox so full, notifications blinked across his watch like Morse code. The woman was the one I watched. No blinking, no notes, just stillness, like a judge before a verdict. "Officer Vega," she said at last, "you have something for us." I placed the flash drive on the table like a live round. Contents? I looked each of them in the eye. Audio comparisons, time frame logs, recorder firmware metadata, 3 cuts of the same file. Audio zo33.mp3 in its original form, the tampered version used to clear Brax in a previous inquiry, and a newly surfaced segment, redacted a033.wav. They exchanged glances. The clicking pen stopped. Brax used the evidence locker like a laundromat, I continued. He'd scrub files, recategorize them under unrelated cases. Look at the file paths. Some of them are tagged to narcotics cases he never worked. One even references a closed robbery where the recorder mysteriously went missing. "Are you alleging fabrication?" I smiled, cold. "I'm offering proof of it." A screen lit up behind them. A waveform of the file filled the display. Twin peaks where one voice overlapped another. Voice print software began its analysis. "He didn't just tell mobsters to add some rumors about me," I said. "He told them what kind, ethnic tropes, romantic allegations, financial misconduct. He weaponized cliché. And he knew the department wouldn't question those stories, because they never really believed I earned my record." Silence. Then, "You're saying this was systemic?" I leaned forward. "I'm saying he didn't need to say much. He just had to press record and let the silence do the rest." When I stepped out into the hallway, I exhaled for the first time that day. The storm hadn't passed, it had just started. But I wasn't hiding anymore. I opened my phone to check messages. 2 unread. One was from the DA. "Your file just bought you more than safety. It bought us a war room." The second was anonymous. "Check your precinct printer." No number, no emoji, no signature. It was after hours, but I turned my car around. The building was quiet. Night shift was skeleton crew. I slipped through the back entrance using my clearance badge and made my way past the rows of locked desks, the glow of idle monitors, the low hum of recycled air. I reached the main bullpen and crossed to the shared printer. The tray had 1 sheet, no envelope, no header. It read, "You're not the only one who's been listening. We just needed someone loud enough to press play." I stared at the paper, heart thudding. There was a name scribbled below the message. Someone from IT, someone I hadn't seen in months, someone everyone said had resigned quietly after a suspension. Apparently, not quite. They tried to silence me with noise. Now their noise had turned into an orchestra, and every note had a timestamp, a badge number, and a paper trail. The message on the printer wasn't just a clue. It was a confession in disguise. Someone inside had heard everything, and they'd been archiving it. I sat in my car with the slip of paper still trembling in my hand. The lights of the precinct flickered behind me, a broken rhythm I'd stopped trusting months ago. My phone buzzed once. Another anonymous message. "Tomorrow, 3rd floor, data vault, ask for maintenance logs." I didn't reply. I never did. Whoever was feeding me these breadcrumbs understood one thing. Silence keeps you alive longer than shouting ever could. but my patience was wearing thin. The next day, I walked into the records department with the kind of confidence you fake until it becomes real. I asked the clerk on duty for the maintenance logs from the third-floor data room. He blinked, then slowly reached under the desk and pulled out a narrow file, still warm at the edges like it had been printed just minutes ago. "Did someone request this already?" I asked. "No," he said, "but someone expected you would." Inside the log was a list of system access points, file extractions, metadata audits, and at the bottom, a string of files all labeled with an unfamiliar code. CX audio series, dozens of them, from different precincts, different years, different voices, and several of them were marked with a familiar note. Lieutenant Brax. I flipped through the pages faster now. My breath shallowed. This wasn't just about audio ZO33 MP3 anymore. Brax had been running an entire operation, a recording and suppression loop. He'd used his rank and access to intercept, duplicate, and rewrite digital evidence. He controlled which files saw the light and which vanished beneath layers of bureaucracy. But someone else had been watching. Someone had pulled the backups before he could bury them. I called the district attorney from the stairwell. "I need to meet, now. Bring your tech team." He didn't ask why. He just said, "Where?" 30 minutes later, I met them in an unused storage room behind city records. Dust floated in the air like fallout, the walls lined with boxes labeled in codes only archivists understood. I laid out the files. The CX audio series, we need to authenticate them before Brax does something stupid. The DA's technician plugged in his laptop and ran the spectrograph overlays. Within minutes, the signatures matched, not just one officer, but 3, all linked by common timestamps and locations, all overlapping with cases that were mysteriously dropped, settled, or lost. The DA looked up at me, pale. "He's been doctoring testimony for years." I nodded. "And now we have a trail." He rubbed his temple. "Do you know what this means?" "I know exactly what it means," I said. "It means we stop playing defense." By nightfall, the oversight board had convened. No cameras, no reporters, just law, teeth bared. The DA presented the files like a surgeon revealing tumors on an X-ray. I stood beside him, silent, while voices around the table turned from doubt to disgust. One of them muttered, "All that talk about mob ties, projection, classic deflection." Another added, "We might be sitting on the largest internal fraud case since the wiretap scandal." The board chair cleared his throat. "Sergeant Vega, if what we're seeing here holds up under federal inspection, you've just opened the door to a full-blown criminal investigation into your own chain of command." I met his gaze. "I didn't open the door. I kicked it." Outside, a text came through. No signature, just 2 words. "He knows." I looked up at the dark windows of the precinct. So be it. The moment I read "he knows," I felt it in my spine. That cold, electric whisper your nerves send up the ladder when something ancient stirs. Instinct, fear, memory. Lieutenant Brax knew I had the files, and he wouldn't wait for a formal hearing to react. I pulled my badge off my belt and tucked it into my jacket pocket. That night, I didn't want to be a cop. I wanted to be invisible. The next morning, the precinct lobby was unusually quiet. No coffee cups clinking, no footsteps in the hallway, just a low murmur from upstairs, like a storm gathering off the coast. HR had locked down floor access. No warnings, only authorized personnel, only cleared devices, only silence. I flashed my ID at the scanner. It blinked red. Access denied. A receptionist I didn't recognize raised her eyebrows. "Sorry, Sergeant Vega. We're in a system refresh. Temporary restrictions." She said it like a script, perfectly memorized, perfectly fake. Down in the evidence locker, the door was physically chained shut, an old-fashioned lock, something you use when you don't trust digital security anymore. I stood there, staring at the rusted metal. Brax wasn't hiding his tracks anymore. He was burning the road, and if I didn't move fast, he'd frame me again, this time with enough noise to drown out every bite of truth I had collected. Back in my car, I called the one number I hadn't used in years. Detective Mona Ramos, a sleepy voice answered. It's Vega. I need a favor. A pause. Jesus, haven't heard that name since the Vice raid. I need access to the citywide case file archive, off-site storage, anything logged under Brax's code from 2018 to now. Are you burning the bridge? No, I'm setting it on fire and dancing in the smoke. She whistled. Text me your burner. You'll get a drop location in an hour. That drop came wrapped in a manila envelope left in the glove box of my backup vehicle. The same unmarked sedan I hadn't driven in 6 months. The file inside had a simple label. Internal draft, Brax rumor operations. Inside, a full breakdown, rumor deployment strategies, list of internal allies, suggested media partners, even a sample Zoom transcript where they discussed timing the press cycle to coincide with HR's disciplinary announcements. It wasn't just corruption, it was orchestration. I took the file directly to the district attorney. He didn't speak, just flipped through the pages, then stopped. You sure about this? He asked. I wasn't, I said, until they locked me out of the building where I've served for 11 years. He slid the file into a secure envelope. You just gave us the hammer. No, I said. You already had it. I just showed you where to swing. That night, I got home to find my front door slightly open, not broken, not forced, just ajar. Inside, nothing was stolen, nothing moved. But on my kitchen table sat a single item, my father's old badge. It had been missing since the day they trashed my locker. I didn't cry, didn't flinch, just turned every light in the house off and sat by the window with my service weapon and a notebook. On the cover, I wrote one word. The badge wasn't a threat. It was an invitation, a reminder from Brax that he knew where I lived, what I cared about, and how to step right up to the line without technically crossing it. Legally, it was just a returned item. Psychologically, it was war paint. I didn't sleep. I barely breathed. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, the case file drafts spread around me like puzzle pieces. The rumors, the forged statements, the names. There were so many names. Some of them were small, patrol officers used as pawns. Others were higher, sergeants, HR reps, a tech liaison. And above them all, like a spider in a web of shredded morals, sat Brax. I made 3 lists. 1, people who'd helped me quietly. 2, people who'd watched and stayed silent. 3, people who'd twisted the blade. I didn't need revenge. I needed a clean detonation. At 6:04 a.m., I received an internal ping on the secure app used for Zoom departmental calls. It was a group chat, created overnight. Name, Vega Files, watch this. Inside was a 27-second video. Grainy, time-stamped 3 months ago. The setting, Brax's office. The angle, high corner camera. One I doubt he remembered was active. He's pacing, talking on his private phone. Let her take the fall. We've got enough noise to bury her 6 floors under. If the DA gets curious, we leak something. Hell, drop a report in the printer again. Screw the chain of custody. Make it messy. Then, a voice replies off-screen, "She's too clean." To which Brax says, smiling, "Not after we're done." I forwarded the video directly to the district attorney. No text. 2 minutes later, he called. I'm freezing his badge. You'll need more than that. We're issuing a notice of investigation, but I want him to sweat first. I grinned bitterly. Good. Let him taste it. By noon, The precinct was buzzing like a hornet nest under glass. No one looked me in the eye. No one asked questions. But when I walked past the printer, I noticed something new, a fresh label stuck to the side of the tray. Audio Zo33, we heard it too. Underneath, in messy handwriting, thank you. At 3 p.m. sharp, Brax entered the building. No escort, no panic, just calm, smug calculation in his stride. I was waiting. He walked past me without a glance, but his voice dropped just enough. You really think you've won? I didn't flinch, just answered without turning. I don't need to win, I just need the truth to stop losing. He paused, one heartbeat too long, then kept walking. An hour later, he was summoned upstairs, not by HR, not by Internal Affairs, by the Office of Legal Integrity, Federal Oversight. They walked in with 2 agents and a sealed warrant, walked out with his badge, 2 hard drives, and his phone. He didn't speak, didn't resist, but I saw it, the twitch in his jaw. Not rage, not fear, recognition. He'd lost control, and control was all he'd ever had. That night I returned home, opened my father's badge case, slid it in beside mine, side by side, 2 symbols of a legacy they tried to break with rumors and red tape. I looked out my window at the city, the weight in my chest finally shifting. They used lies like smoke, but I'd learned how to breathe through it, and I wasn't done yet. The morning after Brax's badge was taken, my phone stopped ringing. No alerts, no buzzes, no fake calendar invites to retraining modules. I was never expected to survive. Just silence. Pure, golden silence. And I loved it. I walked into the precinct with a coffee I didn't have to drink in my car. The floor felt solid again, not because the system had changed, but because I had dragged it screaming into the light. They couldn't unsee it now. Some officers nodded as I passed, others didn't. That was fine. I wasn't here to make them comfortable. At my desk, a small envelope waited for me. No stamp, no initials. Inside, a folded copy of my original case file from 6 months ago, the one that was quietly buried after the Mafia rumors surfaced, the one that named 3 mid-level traffickers and 1 senior officer, connected to a warehouse arson linked to racketeering. In the margin, in faint pencil, someone had written, "Start here, again." Below it, audio zo42.mp3. The system was handing me the next rope, one they couldn't control anymore. I didn't tell anyone, not the DA, not oversight, not even the quiet allies who had stood beside me. Because this time, I wasn't reacting, I was rebuilding. Later that afternoon, I was called to a briefing. The oversight team had compiled their report, not for the press, for the chain of command. As I entered the room, I noticed the change immediately. Fewer uniforms, more suits, tighter posture, and a distinct absence of Lieutenant Brax. The chair of the review board gestured toward the stack of folders in front of her. This is the compiled evidence from the Vega review. The contents include audio 033.mp3, internal transcripts, metadata reports, tampering audits, and supporting testimony from over 16 active officers. We've also included the supplemental CX audio files recovered off-site. A pause. Then she looked at me. You understand the weight of what you've done. I nodded. I understand it was necessary. Good, she said, because they'll come for you in other ways now. I smiled. Let them come. I'm not alone anymore. As I left the room, one of the senior auditors stood and followed me into the hallway. You'll be approached for interviews, he said. Decline, everyone. Let the files speak. I raised an eyebrow. That a threat? No, he said. It's advice. You've already won. Don't give them a second act to twist. I hesitated, then nodded. He was right. Before heading home, I walked one last time into the evidence locker. The chain was gone. The logs had been updated. Everything filed by Brax had been flagged for review. I placed a single item in the bin, my notebook, the one with every date, every file, every quote. On the front, I scribbled, "Chain of custody, internal integrity," then walked away. Outside, the air felt cleaner. Or maybe I had just stopped carrying the weight of everyone else's cowardice. Justice isn't a sword, it's a mirror, and they finally had to look. 3 weeks later, I sat alone on the roof of the precinct. Same rusted bench, same humming AC vent, but everything around me had changed. No more side eyes, no more unsigned HR memos, no more whispered Mafia's favorite jokes echoing down the hallway like bullets with no name. Just quiet. Earned quiet. The city hadn't stopped spinning, but I had. I'd made my peace with the fact that I couldn't clean the whole system. That wasn't my job, but I could light a flare. One loud, undeniable flare that would burn bright enough for others to find their way through the smoke. And it had worked. The district attorney called earlier that morning. "Sergeant Vega," he said, voice crisp, tone lighter. "We're opening a new unit, Internal Data Ethics Task Force, independent, transparent." He paused. "We want you to lead it." I leaned back in my chair and looked at the sky. "I'm not interested in politics," I said. "This isn't politics," he answered. "It's protection. For officers like you, for people who think evidence should be truth, not leverage." I didn't answer right away, because part of me still remembered the recorder, the file, the first time I heard Brax laugh and realized the battlefield wasn't in the streets. It was in the break room, the boardroom, the evidence locker, but maybe this was my chance to redraw that map. I accepted. My first act was simple. I sent an all-staff email, no subject, just a file. Audio Zo33 MP3, one last time, no redactions, no filters, no disclaimers, and beneath it, "Not all battles need bullets. Sometimes all it takes is pressing play." Some officers deleted it without listening, others played it twice. One printed the transcript and taped it inside her locker. A week later, I saw it again. On the inside wall of the women's restroom, scrawled in black marker, "Audio Zo33 is why I stayed." I ran into Detective Ramos downtown not long after. She looked better, lighter. "You really shook the tree," she said. I shrugged. It needed shaking. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" "Sometimes," I said. "But then I remember, if I leave, they win. And I didn't come this far just to surrender in peacetime." She grinned. "You've changed." "No," I said. "I just stopped apologizing for noticing the smoke before the fire." That night, as the city pulsed beneath me, I pulled out my father's badge one last time, held it in my hand, felt its weight, then placed it in a small wooden box on my bookshelf, right next to the recorder that started it all. Not as trophies, not as warnings, but as proof. Proof that one voice, even quietly recorded, could echo louder than 1,000 lies. There are no heroes in systems built on silence, only survivors who learn how to speak.